don't forget a thing. You do not.
Sometimes you want to forget some things. You say, "Oh no, did I do that back when?" But then sometimes you don't.
Yeah, and you clearly remember a lot, and you were running the exact same circles as Kamala Harris. You're out in California. So, can you explain to us how you met her father? Just how that came about?
What was going on is well, this is a convoluted story. Magic Johnson's mother, a fine woman, and one of her buddies, who was the oldest sister of a personal friend of mine, would always involve me in these projects with the islands, right? So they got me down there, and I was supposed to participate in the youth program in Jamaica. So I was the guest of the Prime Minister and the Governor General.
And who was that at the time?
Well, let's not get into that because there's some complications with that. And my ex and we were attendees at this dinner, so we got introduced to everybody's favorite Hindu professor. And you were sitting next to my ex-wife, or wife at the time, for a while, so we all had this back and forth questioning thing at the table. So it was quite interesting, and I recalled running to him back in the 60s. He and his wife were grad students up in the Bay Area, and I was an undergrad at UCLA, so there was a back and forth between Los Angeles, man, where you go crazy and then go to the asylum up in the Bay Area. So it was interesting what was going on back then.
So how was his demeanor when you guys are at this dinner and you're in Jamaica? What do you think about him?
He's reserved.
Reserved.
Dignified, laid back.
Mm-hmm. But still involved and my understanding is that he's been involved in politics actually for a long time, has had an interest in politics his entire life, I would
yes,
say.
Right. I'd call him a Marxist.
A Marxist. And that is exactly what I've heard from a family member of his, that he, from the time he was very young, was always involved in Marxist meetings and Marxist groups, kind of a dyed-in-the-wool commie. I don't think that's something that he's ashamed of, by the way. I think he wrote about in the Jamaican Global Online how he was sort of raised up on the politics via who he purports to be his grandmother, Christiana Brown. But it's interesting that you said you were introduced to a Hindu professor.
Mm-hmm.
What made you think that he was Hindu?
That's the introduction.
That was the introduction. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And your wife?
What is she?
No, did she get to talk to him about that?
She talked to him, and it was interesting because at that time there was no reason to put him with anybody special until you started putting all of it together. He was a Marxist, and when he was up in the Bay Area, a lot of things were going on up there. That was Liberty Park up there, where in 1964, a lot of what was going on that led to the rousing unrest of the 60s and the public demonstrations was happening. My in-laws were from up there, and I didn't know them then because I think my ex-wife was born the same year that Kamala was born, so this was before all of that, but this was the locus of a lot of things going on. The Black Panther Party was up there, developed, so it was pretty radical in Berkeley, Oakland, Richmond, and this is where the action was. UCLA was in Los Angeles that was a bit more civilized. Really wild up there in the Bay Area. So he gravitated to that. That's the way I would analyze it. So there was a Marxist thing up there. Also, this was during the rise of Jim Jones, which is another thing. You know Jim Jones, the Kool-Aid and the picnic. Kamala's sponsor, Willie Brown, Maxine Waters and some other people were, Nancy Pelosi were staunch supporters of Jim Jones. Interesting, yes. You need to look into that. You will find some very interesting things like, hey, this was your mentor and he was a supporter of this. So it was a center for a lot of radicalism at the time.
Wow. So Jim Jones would go on to be a mass murderer. Set up a cult in America. Then moved all these converts to Guyana. And in Guyana, tragedy would unfold amongst a lot of native people of Guyanese people, also people from abroad. Even a government official was harmed, and which led on to the actual kind of invasion of Jonestown in Guyana, which was set up in the jungles, far away from anywhere else. Unfortunately, by the time they got there, the lethal dose of cyanide laced Kool-Aid was given to the people, and bodies were strewn everywhere. Awful scenes. So that's a revelation there. Also, why would they say he's a Hindu? That seems a bit strange, especially being in Jamaica. Was he looked at as sometimes half Indian and half black, are called coolies, which is a racist word which has become accepted in somehow in Jamaica, unfortunately. So you have that name. So that's strange. But even stranger is the connection with Jim Jones. That's an awful episode. No one wants to be connected to that. So there was a bit of revelation there, people, that I found in this interview. Maybe you should check the rest of it. If I'm going to continue watching, if I find anything else, I'll do a small shorts on it and do a little bit of a review. Yeah, the Rifleman, we're unbiased, take emotions out. The world is in a precarious position. Israel are deciding to bomb Iran, which I find quite alarming. So the world holds its breath. In many cases, coming up to November, we have the presidential election in America, which is going to be a slammer of a generation. I think this is going to be it's going to be eventful, to say the least. Yeah, so Judge Brown said that he's a Hindu, and he's a Marxist. The Bay Area, and he knows that he knew a lot of people. I mean, knows a lot of people, and he seems to have been around a lot. I'd never really hear Kamala Harris talk about Jamaica. But my belief is that Candace Owens is Jamaican, I believe, and I think maybe Judge Brown also has some either Jamaican or definitely Caribbean roots. I know that's a contentious thing at the moment, isn't it? We seem to all want to be kind of divided. I wouldn't say division, but it's right to know where, what areas people are from. You can find out a lot about someone by the area, the environment they were in. It shouldn't be the sole position to say you're from a certain area, you must be like this, and that shouldn't be the case. You should always judge people by how they are. And yeah, this division, we suffer from divisions within the black community. And I think one thing we should want to share is survival, of our people, as much as the survival for everyone else. But we must look at ourselves first. Charity starts at home, unfortunately, and we need to do that. It's going to be impossible at the moment because of the negative forces. This is how it's supposed to be. Believe it or not, Ripley, rifleman. This is the way the cookie crumbles at the moment until a reset comes in. Start back over again. So I'm going to continue watching this. If I find anything else of interest, I will be posting soon. Like, share and subscribe. Rifleman. This is the place, the new place of the unbiased news without emotions. All we have is the Rifleman.